Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to this. Obviously, isn't the PWHL Seattle show anymore because they are not PWHL Seattle. They are the Seattle Torrent. This is Under the Surface. That will be the name of our Seattle Torrent podcast, weekly show, whatever you may call it. I had to figure that out. Some of the names for the shows that we do have kind of just come to me. And I had to figure this one out because, there's just so much to catch up on and prepare for ahead of tonight's season opener. First ever game that counts in franchise history for the Torrent that I was like, well, I got to figure it out. And, if we're going to go with the water theme, I figured Under the Surface works. Especially, Under the Surface, we're going to be uh, at these practices, at these games in person, talking to the players, talking to the coaches, talking to GM Megan Turner, stuff that, you know, uh, some of these podcasts won't be doing. Um, and then all these practices on the ground, you know, stuff that, maybe one other show will do. And that is friend of Circling Seattle Sports, Emerald City Hockey, The Downpour, their Seattle Torrent based show. We'll have a lot of collaboration with them. You'll see Dylan and RJ later in this video. I will set a time for when those two come in here for sure. But yeah, we've got some other things. Our last episode was back on the 21st after the team unveiled their inaugural season jerseys, the basic Seattle across the front, the nod to the inaugural six teams in the PWHL. Some things have happened. We're going to go in order here. We're going to go in order. We do have an agenda, my horrible handwriting agenda. On my old Storm letterhead. How nice. And my old November 18th agenda. Anyway, we'll get into it. The thing that happened right after that was that the team unveiled their Unity games, theme nights, and promotional giveaways for their inaugural season. So, the Unity games return to the PWHL this season with the continued goal of celebrating diverse cultures and communities, ensuring PWHL games remain welcoming and inclusive spaces for all. These Unity games, if you're not aware, will feature performances, themed in-game entertainment, as well as local community partnerships that bring the celebration to life. In addition, special artist collaborations and limited edition merchandise will be unveiled throughout the season, with proceeds supporting various nonprofits. Think the Kraken Common Thread Nights. All PWHL teams will introduce three bobbleheads throughout the course of the season. The bobbleheads that the Torrent will be giving away include goaltender Carly CJ Jackson, defender Kayla Barnes, and forward Hillary Knight. Jackson and Barnes are in-game giveaways. Hillary Knight is going to be available for purchase early in 2026 and available for purchase in venue at Climate Pledge Arena and at the PWHL online shop. So as soon as I post that Hillary bobblehead, we're gonna have to add to the collection here. Uh, as soon as they post that. But yeah, let's get into the schedule of Unity games and theme nights. Obviously, November 28th versus Minnesota is the inaugural home opener. And before I continue further on any of that, it was announced, I think yesterday actually, that the Vancouver Golden Eyes, the other expansion team coming into the league with Seattle, had sold out their opener tonight. Looking at the Climate Pledge Arena um, seat map on Ticketmaster, the lower bowl is all but sold out. The upper bowl is getting there. Looks like there's a good chance that Seattle could break the American Pro Women's Hockey attendance record. Per Ian Kennedy of the Hockey News, Seattle would need to pass the attendance number of 14,288. Sorry, not 12. 14,288. That's the number to break. I think Seattle can do it. I am not doubting it, but obviously we want you there to help get that done and get that all packed out. Get the build. You're going to be witnessing history here. Obviously you've heard it for a while with the players that are on this team, with Hillary Knight, with Alex Carpenter, with Corinne Schroeder. There's the Kayla Barnes, as just mentioned. There's so much talent on this roster. We'll talk a little bit more about the personality of this team and what they're fighting for, but There's a lot of excitement not only in the fan base but the media corps. Like a lot of us are really excited to cover this team, not only because of the talent but because of the personalities. Like CJ has been great to talk to. Mara Wagner, I guess, everybody knows it by now, but a Seattle native has made this roster. So there's a lot of excitement, but obviously we want you to pack the barn. Not only just for the home opener, of course, but also the rest of the season. We want to see you there. We're going to be there. We want to see you there. So anyway, I'll shut up. Not really. So yeah, the home opener, the inaugural home opener, Friday, November 28th versus the Frost. Wednesday, December 3rd versus the New York Sirens is the Community Heroes game. Um, the December 17th game versus Ottawa is a carabiner giveaway for the first 6,000 fans in attendance while supplies last. The Sunday, December 21st game versus Boston is the Indigenous Peoples celebration. That's the first unity game of the year for Seattle. January 18th versus Boston is another unity game celebration. It is the Black History celebration. Great to see that in there. I know Vancouver didn't have one, so that's what Vancouver's doing. Anyway, January 20th versus Toronto is the CJ Jackson bobblehead giveaway for the first 6,000 fans in attendance. March 11th versus Boston is the Kayla Barnes bobblehead giveaway for the first 6,000 fans while supplies last. March 29th versus Ottawa is the Kids and Youth Hockey Day presented by WaFed Bank. April 18th versus Vancouver is the AANHPI Heritage Night. AANHPI. Make sure I got that right because that's my night. Uh, um, April 22nd versus Minnesota is the Barbie X PWHL Seattle belt bag giveaway for the first 6,000 fans in attendance. And the April 25th game versus the Montreal Victoire is the Pride celebration, uh, the last of the Unity games there. So that is cool to get that in there. You should have seen a graphic ahead of you, well, in your face, actually, on your screen the whole time that I've been saying that. Get back here. We'll move ahead to the identity launch. Everybody's seen it by now. Everybody's got their opinions on the Seattle Torrent. I've long said I don't really care what they call this team. I just knew it couldn't be Sirens because the New York Sirens exist, and it wasn't going to be Frost or Freeze, sorry, because the Minnesota Frost are a team in the league, and it'd be far too similar to that. You can have all your opinions either way about the identity of this team, but to me, at the end of the day, I'm just happy that Seattle has this PWHL team. CSS broke the news of this team becoming reality, and you know, I just happy to cover it. I've wanted to cover women's hockey here. We were the only outlet at both. Hold on, I'll get the pucks out at the rivalry series when it came to Climate Pledge Arena. You can see that lovely puck. Too many pucks. And the takeover tour earlier this year when it came to Seattle. So, it's not only that, but the inaugural season of the UW Women's Hockey Club. So, yeah, man, really excited to get going with this. They've called it the Torrent. We'll go over this a little bit. The torrent draws inspiration from powerful waterways that shape and connect Washington's unique landscape, symbolizing the team's determination to carve its own path. The logo features an S that serves as both a letter form for Seattle and a rush of water, its flowing curves mirroring river channels. The primary color palette of slate, green, and blue, both shadow and glacier blue, reflects the distinctive ways uh, in which Seattle's waterways shape the region and pays tribute to Seattle's unique sports community. The leading colors are complemented by foam, haze gray, and basalt black. Um, there was an availability with one of the uh, league designers that talked about this, that they ran the name and the logo by the players. The players had positive feedback on it, so I know it's pretty polarizing. Um, who knows if they'll pull a Sonic movie and, by the time that next year rolls around where they're actually supposed to wear the logo on the uniform, if they'll have changed it or tweaked it. but I don't know. It fits into the water theme. I like the colors. The green looks really good in person. Seeing with the players in their gloves and their helmets and the hockey pants. Um, I think it looks good. But that's just me. Again, I am just here for the team. Happy to be there. The PWHL led the design process for Seattle's team identity and collaborated with creative agency Flower Shop for Seattle's name and logo. Kanan Bat Shah, the PWHL Vice President of Brand and Marketing, oversaw the process, which was grounded in local insights and community storytelling. The merch is already sold pretty well at the Kraken Community Iceplex location. They were down to pretty limited sizes. My mom wanted to get something there, but had to wait because they did not have the smaller sizes of things. So yeah, that is that. We got to the identity. We've had training camp. You'll hear from Dylan Travers and myself about training camp in a little bit here. But we'll go to the scrimmages. The team had two scrimmages up in Vancouver against the Golden Eyes. They were closed to the public and the media, so we couldn't see anything. There was no stream. Fans couldn't attend. It was just an empty barn and the players. In the first game on Saturday, the 15th of this month, Vancouver won by 3-0 final score. Vancouver scored a goal a period in this one. Risser from Malia Schneider in the final minute of the first got them on the board. Michaela Kava added to the lead in the second period, and Michelle Carvinen scored in the third. So it's a tough one, get shut out, but you got to expect some bumps and bruises with this inaugural season team. Um, Anytime you get an expansion team, it's going to be hard. Corinne Schroeder and CJ Jackson combined for 17 saves in this one. Schroeder got 2 periods of gameplay in this one. Um, mm, 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 mm. Yeah, what else do we have here? See if we got anything else in the game summary. Um, Oh yeah, a lot of special teams work. Aneta Teralova and Jida Habish both went to the box in the first period. Teralova for elbowing, Habish for high sticking, Teralova again for elbowing in the second period, and then the third period, Lindy Lobdell for kneeing late into the game. So not great for the having to put your penalty kill out there so much. Seattle dominated the shots. Well, not dominated, but they led the shots 13 shots to 6 in the second is dominating, I would say in that regard, but obviously it doesn't matter if they don't beat the goaltender. Yeah, Corinne Schroeder, um, 40 minutes of play. CJ Jackson with 20 in this one against Vancouver. So that was the Saturday game. Much better result in the Sunday game. Win that scrimmage, the second of those two. By a score of 4-2 in that rematch against Vancouver. Nice to see that Bucky, Tyler Grant Mentis, and Jenna Buglioni scored 20 seconds apart in the first period. The Grant Mentis goal was excellent, excellent goal to give Seattle a 2-0 lead. Vancouver would strike on a penalty shot, but Olivia Wallen, the sixth-round draft pick, added another for Seattle at the 14-18 mark of the second period, and Seattle native Mara Wagner scored early in the third period to further the Torrent lead. Um, Yeah, CJ Jackson got 2 periods of play in goal for Seattle in this one, 17 shots on 18 attempts. And Hannah Murphy made seven stops on 8 attempts in 1 period of play for Seattle there. So that was pretty cool to see. Much more rotated of a lineup here. I don't think there was too much overlap. I think the only overlap was Sir Dackney, Buglioni. Mara Wagner was in there, but yeah, it was a pretty rotated lineup in terms of the forwards and the D from the Saturday scrimmage to the Sunday scrimmage. So I don't know, it's kind of tough to go off just what they're giving you, when a part of our whole job as media is to kind of go over it and tell you what we see. But we have to work with what we got. Um, yeah, 2 days after that, the roster started to trim down a bit. Um, Seattle was at 26 players after these moves, and they had to be there's the 23 player roster and then the three reserves. So there were 26 players after the moves, and it was just like, okay, who's going to be on reserve contracts, right? Seattle would cut forward Olivia Wallen and defender Lily Jovetic from training camp. It was tough for either of these team players, sorry, to make this team. Wallen, sixth draft pick. Jovetic was a camp invite, and good for them to be able to get their release early, or well, not early, but somewhat earlier in the process, um, so that, excuse me, they could get with another team. Wallen is with the Charge, I do believe. I think she's with the Charge. I will double check this as a reserve. So good for her. She's in Ottawa. Ottawa obviously had the season that they did last year. Um, but yeah, let's see. Let's go all the way back here. Um, oh, totally lost it. Hello, Ottawa. Yeah, as a reserve for the Charge. Yep. So she joins them. Good for Olivia. It's tough with these draft picks. With how good the Seattle roster is, there were going to have to be some tough decisions, right? Jovetic, I mean, same thing. Just with how good that blue line is, there was always going to be some tough decisions, made by Seattle just so that they could optimize this season and make the most of year one. And because who knows what's going to go on in the off season if the league decides they're going to add more expansion teams or what. So it's tough. It's really tough. You're not going to put down anybody. Um, you wish them the best. Yeah, that was that. We got the news of the roster being finalized yesterday during practice. So the decisions made, the reserve players would be draft pick Jada Habish, Sydney Langseth. Sydney Langseth was a camp invite. Two forwards there in Langseth and Habish, and then defender Emily Zumwinkle signed reserve player contracts. That means that the team signed forwards Lily Delianetis, Brooke Bryant, Mara Wagner, and defender Lindy Lobdell to 1 year standard player contract agreements to complete its active roster. Mara Wagner, a Seattle native, makes the roster. We're all very excited, particularly because Mara has followed the Circling Seattle Sports Instagram account for a few years now. So that's really cool to see. Seattle carries 13 forwards, seven defenders, and three goaltenders on the roster. Um, Also snuck in there was the news that the team signed defender Anna Wilgren through the 26-27 season. Initially back in July, out of the expansion draft, the Seattle had signed Wilgren through this year, the 25-26 season, just the 1 year. But this news seems to be a 1 year contract extension for Wilgren through the 26-27 season, which is next year. So that's somewhat interesting to me. I was trying to figure that out and I was a bit confused. The other piece of news that dropped about an hour later yesterday was the team naming forward Alex Carpenter and defender Emily Brown as the alternate captains. Um, Carpenter was an alternate captain with the New York Sirens the last 2 years, as well as Team USA. She was a captain at Boston College as well, if I remember correctly. And Emily Brown, who was the captain of the University of Minnesota, will help round out Seattle's first ever leadership group with Torrent captain Hillary Knight. So that's not surprising news. Um, yeah, I was kind of wondering this literally while I was filling out the roster information with a few friends. I said, "Hey, are we going to get A's before tomorrow's game?" Sure enough, we do, and it's two players that I had kind of figured would be named the eighth. So that's really exciting to see. It all feeling a lot more real, and it will feel extra real when the puck drops tonight in Vancouver for the first game. So, yeah, it'll be really cool. That's all I got for the kind of roundup of news that we had for the torrent. I will throw it to Dylan and myself, Dylan Travers and myself, to start talking about this team, what we saw at training camp, the areas of concern maybe for this team. Talk about the blue line. Talk about some of those other things. Who could be the MVP of this team? At the end of the day, end of the season. And then RJ from Emerald City Hockey will join us as well. We'll get the two Emerald City Hockey guys to talk about the team's need for keys to success as well as breakout players. So until we see you next time, take care of yourselves, be well, do whatever you can to make today a great day. It's lovely to have Dylan back with me. My favorite person. Certainly. No, it's great. Dylan and I
You
have
start off the segment with lies, Charles.
deceit. No, it's been great, having Dylan around. I think last time you and I talked, it was actually, kind of previewing what you guys were going to do,
Hmm.
covering the torrent. Now, you guys have got the downpour. I believe your episode, your most recent episode, I don't imagine you're holding it for tomorrow.
No,
Um,
we're dropping it today.
yeah, so that'll be out by then. I know, you guys talked about doing a whole breakdown on the roster, so I'll be happy to listen to that when it's done and when I'm editing this. But no, Bill and I have been hanging around lovely KCI watching these training camp days go by and getting the media availabilities that we have. I guess first, Dylan, just for you, what stood out to you about training camp? I know that I'm gonna keep going back to it, but Caleb Barnes on day one laying a hip check down. I did not expect to see any of that. It's just been fun. There's a good energy around this team. There's a lot of talk about, and it's justified talk, right? About getting the chemistry down, getting that all set. But this group seems to be having fun. There's just so much talent on this roster. So before we get into, more, I guess, specific things and more specific questions, what jumps out to you about the training camp days that we have, and I guess the 2 days of practice that they've had after the scrimmages as they prepare for, the opener in Vancouver.
I mean, really, it's just been how efficient the team has kind of run all of this stuff and how efficient they've had to be just because of how limited the amount of time that they've had is. I mean, you're talking about an expansion group coming together, having six practice slash training camp periods of ice time and two preseason slash scrimmage games up in Vancouver. And that's it. And then we just roll into tomorrow and hey, guess what? The regular season is here and it's upon us. So I think the big thing that stood out to me is kind of how efficient they've run that. We really saw special team stuff only come in yesterday and today, saving that for the very end, which makes sense. You need to kind of figure out the big stuff before that. I know that head coach Steve O'Rourke has been working with the players before they all arrived in Seattle and they were actually able to get that out there on the ice, communicating with them what sort of systems the team wants to run, what the expectations are for the team from an identity standpoint, a play style standpoint, how they want to attack different situations and kind of going about that. So I think having that line of communication open was huge because that's normally conversation that takes place during, say, the first week of an NHL training camp to an extent, right? You don't have that luxury when you have six on ice sessions with your players to do that. And so getting kind of ahead of the curve there, communicating with them, trying to get all that stuff going, I think was really important. And it's great that the coaching staff was able to do that with the players and then just making the most of the ice time that you have. I mean, these are long practices. These are not like NHL 40-minute practices, right? That we've been seeing. We're talking about the team being out there on the ice for a while before practice officially starts, and then practice going for about an hour and 40 minutes with maybe a 10-minute resurfacing break in between there. And then, even some players staying out past that to do positional work. And we saw that today, right? Centers working on face-offs,
Yep.
defenders working on taking shots from the point and moving it along there, wingers working on below the goal line and behind the net, cycling, things like that. So we're seeing them really trying to maximize the limited amount of time that they have. And I think that that's been my big takeaway from camp is how much they've actually been able to get done because they've been able to, make the most of the opportunities that they have.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, I mean, I know Hillary Knight has had to answer so many questions over the last few months about how do you lead this group? How do you build that chemistry? And, to the point, I mean, what do we like? Well, you guys weren't there. But I literally saw it today. I, was waiting around getting some work done afterwards. I think you had to report the downpour. I saw them get on the bus. Like there's that whole bus
Hmm.
ride that they've got to go up to Vancouver, stuff like that. Obviously builds that chemistry. And yeah, I mean, efficient. They got a lot of stuff to, and you and I talked about it. Install, like that's something that you'll hear with coaches so early on in so many different sports, about installing their systems and getting that sort of thing right. Um, yeah, no, it's been kind of interesting to see that because I'm not used to that. I'm not used to we're there for like effectively 2 hours, watching this stuff go on. So yeah, especially I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like today was the most well, you kind of talked about at the end, but I'm sure this was the most we've seen the special teams units, with a special teams unit like Neda Terelova, Hannah Bilka, Alex Carpenter, Julia Gosling, Hillary Knight. It's like on paper, of course, and paper is one thing. It's great. Um, that second one was interesting. And I know you and I kind of were trying to figure out what was going on here
Hmm.
with Caleb Barnes. The other consistent, it was Caleb Barnes, Daniel Serdachny, Jesse Eldridge, Natalie Snodgrass, and then there was a little bit of change in Anna Wilgren and Bucky, Michaela Grant Mentis. Um, I mean, there's still a lot of talent all over that, but it was kind of interesting. And I know again, you and I were talking about it today. It seems like they were kind of changing things, but I do wonder, and I know we'll have RJ on in a little bit to talk about, what keys to success will need to be, but you just wonder how quickly that power play can get going. Um, I do think it'll help though with some of the familiarity that Bilka and Knight will have, that Carpenter, Knight, and Bilka will have, um, yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything on special teams today? Because like you and I were even remarking today with the penalty kill, with the rules in this league, it's a little different on how we view, I guess, a penalty kill and how they practice that sort of thing.
Right. The fact that when a penalty is taken, the rest of the players that were out there on the ice have to be out there for the start of the penalty kill means that everybody to some extent needs to practice being on the PK because at any time you could find yourself out there on the PK. You're running into situations, and they did during the scrimmage games this weekend, where you have three forwards, one defender out there
Yeah.
and you're on the PK. And so it's one of those things where everybody kind of has to do it. I think it was hard to read into what the PK units today would were because one, it's again kind of hard to set up sustained PK units when anybody could be in the box and then you're just stuck out there with whoever, but also because I have to assume some of the players that were taking part on the power play side of things, which was clearly the focus of the drills that they were running, would also be double, taking time on the PK as well, right? Like Teralova's going to play on the PK. She just is. But you needed to work out the power play. You needed to focus on that. That is more important right now anyway. And so we weren't seeing any, Terlova, Caleb Barnes PK work today. That being said, PK, what impressed me about it was how aggressive it was, kind of going with a diamond formation, played extremely aggressive. They want to limit the amount of time and ability for the other team to make a play and kind of read the situation. You just want to force them into having to move that puck quickly because that's when you force other teams to make mistakes, right? If a player doesn't really have time to survey and get a read of the ice and figure out where they want to go with that puck, they're just going to throw it somewhere quickly. That pass is not going to be as accurate as it should be, and you have the potential for them to throw it into a lane where you already have a defender and you could potentially pick it off. So I think that that's really important on the power play side of things. And RJ and I talked about this on the downpour. Um, it's it's going to be a heavy work in progress, more so than any other aspect of this roster. The power play is going to be the biggest work in progress because it's always kind of that last thing for the coaching staff to get to when you're going through
Mm.
training camp, especially when you're talking about a roster where so few players have the relationships. And I do think, like, yeah, power play unit one, having Knight and Bilk out there together, having Knight and Carpenter out there together, players who have some experience playing together is going to be huge. And that's going to give them some ability to maybe get some things going there. But so much about power plays is consistency and chemistry. And we see this all the time in the NHL where a new power play coach will come in and join a team. And that first year under that coach, it's a little rocky, and then year two is when it starts picking up. It just comes down. It's not even like personnel based. It's literally just learning those systems and having those systems become shorthand for the players out there, and it just takes time. So I think already the roster overall is going to be a little bit rocky going into the start of the season, but I think that that power play especially is going to be something that's going to be interesting to watch because normally I would say this power play is going to be really bad, but because
Mhm.
you have what, three or four top 10, 15 players from last season out there on your power play unit one. I mean, how bad could it be? Like it feels like the talent you have gives you a fairly safe floor.
That's something I was interested to ask about, when talking about, hearing about the chemistry part and them building that, and especially, now that we bring this up with the power plays, the floor part's a great way to phrase it because I was going to say at what point, like, how much does the talent, in place, how much is it able to, maybe bail you out to an extent, because there's the whole thing, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. But I
Hmm.
have to imagine there's to an extent where just how much, and we've heard from, the one availability that we did have yesterday with Jenna Buglioni. She talked about how much the skill is evident with this team. Like, I just wonder, and I don't know, and obviously I'm not saying it'll completely overrule the lack of familiarity. I do wonder if how many instances we might see this season, especially early on, where the just the star power, the skill maybe bails this team out where, having that familiarity, having that cohesion would be something that normally gets you over the hump. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And
So
I think that that's legitimate. And again, I was just like going back and I'm looking at it, and you're talking about like the amount of goals on that power play unit, right? Like the amount of goals that they scored last year. And I know they obviously didn't score them all on the power play, but it's just it's insane. No other power play in the league is going to be able to look like this one from a talent standpoint. And again, it's going to take time for them to come together, but I I would be shocked if they still weren't able to probably end up in the top half of the league despite everything.
yeah, that is something, that I'll be looking at to see if just someone having their skill maybe elevate a play when the power play just looks terrible. It's just like Hiller Knight's going to make a play that says, okay, we are going to convert this, even if we're not quite clicking right now. I
Yeah.
guess that kind of.
Well, I was going to say, and it is one of these things where, and I talk about this a little bit in regards to save percentage and shooting percentage on
Mm,
our podcast, but I'll bring it up here for special teams. The normal, if you're coming from the NHL and you're coming in to watch PWHL and you want to follow the torrent, obviously great. I think it's going to be a fantastic ride. Glad to have you on board. Percentages are different in this league than what we're used to in the NHL. Goalie save percentages are higher, just on average, than what we see in the NHL. Shooting percentages are thus lower than what we see in the NHL, just kind of across the board. So know those two things going in. Power play percentages pretty awful last year around the PWHL. You had Toronto at 25% on the power play. Nobody else got to 20%. Nobody else got to 19% on the power play as a team last year. And so it is one of those things. Offense is a little bit harder to come by in the PWHL than it is in the NHL, and that does carry over to the power play. So it's one of those, if the Seattle power play comes out and they're at 10% for the first month of the season, they're actually not that far off from potentially where they just could be anyway. Normally in the NHL, that would be a massive red flag, huge warning sign, like things, you start talking about coaches in charge of things and all of that kind of stuff.
mm.
Look, there was both Montreal and Boston were at 15% last year, and they weren't the lowest team in the league. So I think if Seattle comes out and they're really bad and they're at like 10%, yeah, that's going to be low for the PWHL, but it's not, it's going to provide, they don't have that much to go actually compared to what we would be used to seeing as hockey fans coming over from the NHL.
It's interesting you mentioned that because, before I had any inkling that Seattle was going to get a team, I watched the league the last few years. I was following the Fleet largely, mostly because of Hillary Knight and because I like green. Um, and that was something like the offensive numbers weren't great. Even in year one when they made the Walter Cup, it kind of seemed like Boston was kind of struggling along. In the power play, yeah, it was like, oh man, like I don't think a power play with Hillary Knight, and the talent that Boston had. I mean, Boston has got a ton of talent.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think they should be struggling like this. Um, uh, that leads me to my next thing I want to ask you about. What concerns you? Because obviously there's a lot of talk. There's, it's largely very positive when you're talking about this Torrent team, whether it's nationally or the few folks that are covering out here. It's like obviously there's a lot of talent. It's hey, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but no team is going to be perfect. You've got to get through what the 30 game season, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Things will happen. Things won't click as we've talked about. Um, what concerns you? Because I know we've brought up the bottom six.
Mhm.
That'll be interesting. There's still, some pretty good talent there, but maybe in contrast to what you're seeing in the top six, it's a little bit different. Um, I, I don't want to do this necessarily because it kind of, goes on the opposite of what RJ was saying later in this episode. But maybe if you're a supreme doubter, you could look at the goaltending situation. Say, hey, Corinne Schroeder's proven. I'm not saying CJ Jackson isn't, but only getting the one start last year isn't super great in terms of, maybe I'm in the school of hearing Philip Grubauer tell me all the time how much rhythm is a big thing for him as a
Yeah.
goaltender, right? And then Hannah Murphy's a rookie, and I'm not downplaying rookies, but I don't know. You do have to think about these things because it's not all going to go well, right? Like what
Yeah.
what sticks out to you as areas of concern, before we drop the puck on this season?
Yeah, I mean, I do think like the depth goaltending wise is something to maybe pay attention to because you're going to be looking at Schroeder playing between like 20 to 23 games. So you are there's potentially up to a third of the season is going to be played by another goalie or two in this case, right? And you're talking about then a pair of goalies that has one combined start between them. I think that's a fair thing to like acknowledge and say like, hey, look, we don't know how that's going to go. I think personally, after watching them in camp and the one start that CJ had last year was pretty fantastic. It's a very good start. I think that that's a good omen. Watching them both through camp, I don't think it'll be a huge problem. But yeah, I think that that is definitely something to look at, and I think that it's fair to be concerned about. I look at the bottom six and I kind of labeled it the weakest part of this roster. And
Okay.
that's still saying, it's this bottom six being weak compared to any other team's bottom six around the league, with the exception of Vancouver. It's still, something I think five general managers probably around the league would say that they would want over what maybe they have. So it's very much one of those like you're having to pick the just like the least great option that you have because everything you have is great on this roster. And specifically when it comes to the bottom six, like yeah, fourth line based on what we've seen, it's going to be like a pretty physical, grinded out kind of line.
Hmm.
And that's what they're kind of going for. It's a fourth line. That's what they are. And so I think that you're actually probably okay there. And having Bucky potentially center that line, I think gives it a little bit of offensive pop and the ability to go out there and maybe make some stuff happen there. The third line is the one, and at least third line based on what we saw today. And I have to assume that that's what we're going to see tomorrow because why else would you have them all paired up today before you have to then go and play in a game? Is where I think I have the most, and it's not even concerned, but I think where I think the team is just at its weakest, and that is, you've got Jenna Buglioni centering, who is a rookie, first round pick, very talented player, great career at Ohio State, all of that good stuff. But she's going to be entering the PWHL, and this is a league that historically, it feels like anyway, I don't have the numbers strictly to back this up, but it feels like from looking at things, rookies tend to struggle in. I think
Mm.
because of what the PWHL is, you're talking about women's players from all around the world, at least up until this year, right? We're all being condensed down into six rosters. So you
Yep.
were talking about legit best of the best. And I think now it's expanded out to 8 rosters. So that's like a little bit as far as diluting that talent pool. But for the most part, that's just a difficult assignment for anybody because, yes, you can be part of one of the best college teams and be one of the best players on that best college team, like Bugs was last year at Ohio State. But you're still walking then into a situation where you now have 2 or 3 generations worth of college athletes, and it's all of the best of them, right? They were all you, but now they've had even more experience and time. And so I think it's just going to be an adjustment like it is for really any rookie coming into any sport, but I think it's a little bit greater in this specific circumstance. So I think Bugs is going to have a little bit to work on there. And then you look at the winger she has, and you're talking about a camp invite in Wagner, and it's like great that she made the team, all of that stuff, great feel good story, all that stuff. But she was a camp invite.
Yes.
And then on the other side, you have Brooke Bryant, who I do think, later when we talk with RJ, we talk about, potential breakout players. I think Brooke Bryant also
Yes.
falls into that category. But, Brooke Bryant got 6 minutes a night last year in Minnesota. And look, on a back-to-back, Walter Cup winning team, like it's a good, team that she was a part of. But you are talking about a player who was only getting 6 minutes a night in this league. Had great points per 60, does like all the numbers back up that she should be a breakout performer and getting more minutes should be a good thing. But you're talking about a line with a rookie in a league that's tough on rookies, a camp invite, and somebody who got 6 minutes a night last year. And that's like your most experienced player on that line. That concerns me a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't look at the numbers too much on Mara Wagner, who I'm sure I'll have a whole thing on because, the Seattle and me, right? But I thought her Swedish numbers weren't bad when she was in the Swedish league, but obviously that's the Swedish league. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what the
You
like the
know,
conversion rate is for
no
points
for
and stuff
conversion
like
rate.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting with Buglione because you and I think we talked about Jenna a lot today at practice. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you come in, you're on a wagon that is Ohio State, and you come in here, and it's just so much different. I think going forward for Jenna, I already think she's got some great tools.
For sure.
Being around her for the media availabilities that we've had, right? Just hearing her talk, she seems like she's got a great head on her shoulders, great charisma, and you get, I mean, so you talk about the lines, right? You get to learn from Alex Carpenter, Hillary Knight. I mean, it's hard for me to kind of put like Bilka and Serdachny in there because they're pretty young,
Hmm.
but I mean, you've just got so much to learn from. I think that's something I talked with her about during the media tour they did in the summer was she just wants to be a sponge, which she should, you
Hmm.
know. But no, I think this is all fair, and I don't like I feel like with some of the shows that I do on our thing, and I know at times, talking to you guys with Emerald City Hawk, whether it's a deep dive, and then I can't say it as much in the downpour because it's like the number of episodes for the different shows is very vast,
Yeah.
right? But it's like this is not like we're here to tear down the team. This is just hey, again, like I said in the beginning of the areas of concern question, there will be times where this team struggles. That's just the reality of it. And I'm sure the coaching staff has things that they're looking at that they want to either correct now in the limited ice time that they get, or they are going to have to prepare for. They're naturally deficiencies. So it's just something that we're looking at. I just don't want it to be like, oh, sitting here and bad, 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 right?
Yeah. No, and again, it's very much like you are I compared it on the downpour to, if you were talking about a specific player, it's like talking about, Sidney Crosby or Hillary Knight, where you're like, oh, what's the worst part about their game? And that's still that worst aspect of their game is better than 95% of their peers is like best aspect of their game. You know what I mean? Like you are very much splitting hairs by talking about, any concerns or flaw. Yeah, sorry. Any concerns or potential issues with this roster. It is because it just doesn't really actually have them. Like you're having to really search for them, to find this stuff. The third line thing, like again, Wagner played really well, earned the spot on the team. You're talking about yes, a rookie in Bugs, but a first round pick. Like that's not like an unskilled player, right? And then Brooke Bryant, who absolutely deserved more ice time and just happened to be on prior to these expansion rosters, the most stacked team in the league.
Mhm.
And so just wasn't able to get it. And even if that line is going to be slow, and those are players that are going to have to learn things along the way, especially with Buglioni, it's sheltered completely by that top
Yes.
six. Like it doesn't matter. You can have one line that needs to grow a little bit more than some other lines around the league because already you have two first lines essentially going out there ahead of you. It's fine. I like it's a concern, but how what's my level of concern? Very low.
And how much is that line going to be? How many
There's
shifts are
no
they going to get in
pressure
the
on
third
them.
period? Well,
Right.
yeah, when
There's
you're pushing like
Like you're going to get insanely good matchups because everybody else has to exhaust themselves playing against the top two lines. And yeah, they're not going to be asked to be the line that has to go out there and get the job done. Like you've got two lines ahead of you in that rotation. So I think there's going to be very little pressure on them. They're going to get great matchups, and I think that that's going to help their development a lot.
yeah, that would yeah, the development pay because, I mean, it's exciting because I mean, we go back to it and it's always fun. It's so funny for me to keep looking at this line chart from today
It's
and
so
think
broken.
about yeah, and that's the thing because I'm gonna say, you've got these younger players, like a Bilka. I mean, that second line, um, your blue line isn't exactly old. I do want to. Well, I'm gonna get to the blue line, but who knows what the expansion process will look like when these next teams come into the league? Because obviously, it seems like the PWHL is very into that. There seems to be the interest. Certainly, there's interest in Detroit. Um, who knows how expansion will hit this team, but it does seem like GM Megan Turner like has the keys to potentially set up some strong players for the future. In addition to having this roster right now, um, I know the big thing is the blue line with this team, and I know you've mentioned that. I'm sure you guys talked about it pretty extensively on the downpour, but I got to talk about it more because I mean
Hmm.
it's just like I keep getting so used to. I mentioned Caleb Barnes's hip check. Anna Wilgren. I think I'll have said it by now. Has signed a year extension to have her in Seattle through the 26-27 season. And then Terralova, I don't think gets talked about enough. Emily Brown's an alternate captain. I keep forgetting Megan Carpenter, not Carpenter. Megan Carter's on this roster. This roster. Like, what were we saying earlier? Is that Mariah Keppel is also is what your seventh? Your like this blue line is insane.
I mean,
Uh,
right now you're talking about Keppel Carter being your third pair. Like that's what we
yeah,
saw today. That's at least a second pair on any other team like around the league. Like I think that's potentially a second pair on Vancouver because Vancouver kind of went more forward heavy. Like
yes, yeah,
it's insane that that's what you're talking about.
yeah. And I just have you expand a little more on that because Kayla Barnes is fun. I mean, you see her as she was the top D on the power play one, right? Oh, wait,
No, Terlova
he was on
was.
two. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Terralova. I mean, splitting hairs again.
Yeah.
You
Great,
know,
great,
um,
great problem to have trying to figure out which one of them gets power play one time versus two.
but like you get the two Victoire, getting to watch Barnes at the Takeover Tour game here was fun. I do remember that. Emily Brown seems like a great personality.
Mhm.
Um,
Big
yeah,
on
I
shot
just
blocks too. Second in the league last year in shot blocks, just eats pucks. 8-1 today too. Block that shot and it stung for a sec, but you heard at camp today, everybody, cheering her on and stuff,
oh,
stick
that's right.
taps on the ice after that one. But yeah, that's very much Emily Brown's kind of style is to be physical, can kind of go match up with anybody net front that's going to try to set up and try to screen the goalie. Emily Brown's going to be the one that's going to go in there and try to clear him out.
Yeah, no, I just what more can you say about this blue line? Because yeah, I mean, you've got what those three pairs that are all, they were all well versed, and then you look at Lobdell is one of your draft picks, and Zumwinkle I don't think is I think she's also one on the younger side. I got all messed up because there's Zumwinkle in the league, so I kept thinking of her. It's not the same person. Yeah, I just what more can you say about this blue line? Because I think the general the standard fan will be like, okay, Hillary Knight, Alex Carpenter, Hannah Bilka, right? Like that's
Yes.
great. But when you talk when in the areas of concern, you go to the third line of the forwards. You didn't say anything bad about the D.
Nope.
I just what more can you say about this blue line and how exciting that can be? Because I don't like to directly compare, right? Like Dylan, I do a lot of the women's sports side of things. I don't like to do the side by side the men and the women's teams, but it's just interesting with the Kraken because there's a lot of money devoted to that blue line, and
Hmm.
until this year, and they've even had their struggles this year, but this year in a structure they haven't necessarily performed to per se to the money that's being like allocated to that position, right? This time, I mean, just oh, I don't know. Yeah, what more can you say about this
Yeah.
blue line? Because it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where, and we talked about this on our pod. You can having two players like Terlova and Caleb Barnes, and the setup that you have and being able to split them up and not have to force them to play together. Uh, they could just play like half the game if you wanted to. Certainly, like in a game that matters, like if you needed them to. I mean, RJ did a great job, brought up that triple overtime game between their teams last year.
Ah,
And you're talking about 50 minutes that Kayla Barnes played in that. And with Terlova, it was well over 40. And you could just do that. And by the way, Wilgren played over 50 with Caleb Barnes. So, you're talking about having some premier players back there, players that you could really count on in a variety of situations to go out there and play for a long time and extremely hard for you. Um, I think that what makes a lot of them unique on this blue line, and specifically with Terlova Barnes and to an extent with Wilgren, is that they could be puck movers, but they could also be
mm,
really good defensive players. They can go out there and they can stop other teams' rushes. They can play well in the defensive zone. They can force turnovers. They can help break out the offense. They can hold the puck in the offensive zone along the blue line, walk that blue line, try to find openings, look for shooting lanes. The fact that there's this blue line doesn't have a lot of players that really skew one direction or the other, offense or defense. And I
mm,
think we're used to that a lot. Certainly watching the Kraken, where you have guys like Montour, you have Vince Dunn, and they're very offensive. Riker Evans very offensive, and then on the other end you've got Lars, you've got Ryan Lindgren, you've got
mm.
Jamie Alexiak, very defensive. You look at this blue line, and a lot of these players are just well rounded. And again, you're talking about not just like, okay, they're well rounded, but maybe the skill level isn't there, but the skill level is also there. And I think that that's what's going to make this blue line really special, is that there's nobody that the other teams can really key in and try to take out of the play. Because like, what are you going to do? You're going to take, okay, they key in on Caleb Barnes. They want to try to take Caleb Barnes out. Well, Anna Wilgren's just going to eat you alive then. Like, sorry. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
don't know what you're supposed to do as far as game planning for this blue line, other than, you know, you just have to try to execute on your own game plan and all of that kind of stuff. But you're there's never going to be a weak moment out there for you to try to exploit or try to get your stuff done.
It's so fun. So
I
fun.
guess, and I guess if you're Seattle, you just tell them don't ever take a penalty. I mean, you're probably covered anyway because your blue line is so deep, but like I don't know. If there was a way, certainly if it was like NHL, I'd be like, yeah, I would be running like three defender PK units because you're so deep, you could afford to have them all, have those minutes.
Yeah, well, and even to that point, like seeing that, not really having like the possibility of a jailbreak isn't far off with this group because you
It's
talk
not.
about, right? I mean, so oh, oh God, see what you did? You got me all excited now. That's great. It's
Only
great.
got to
Like
wait a day.
people should yeah, there you go. That's a great point. People should be excited about this, because uh yeah, again, and I did pull up the pronunciation sheet. I am glad I've been saying Keppel right. I'm worried I was messing that up. Last thing I need is someone, you got that wrong. I was like,
Uh,
oh, I
by the
get a lot
way,
of things.
led the league in shot block. So I said Emily Brown was second in the league last year. It was Keppel who
Jesus
was
Christ.
first.
You've got the
So
top
like
two shot blockers.
you have a lot of people on this team that want to go out there and block shots, and I think that was probably intentional when Megan Turner was setting up this roster.
Hey man, what have we been hearing? Not only fast, but also physical.
Yeah.
We'll get to more of the basic superlatives here, and we'll get to the point where we bring in RJ for this one. But I feel like you could go basic, or maybe you could go sleeper, or you could break it into different categories. What's your MVP if you're predicting for this team? Because obviously Hillary Knight gets a lot of shine, and rightfully so. Obviously one of the greatest players to touch the ice ever. Alex Carpenter is no slouch in any means. Hannah Bilka, I love watching Hannah Bilka, and as soon as I found out that she was, going to be left unprotected, I was kind of like circling the proverbial sheet. But yeah, I mean, we just gushed about the blue line. Corinne Schroeder, is more than her fair share of shutouts. I mean, yeah, how would you view sort of an MVP? Do you want to give me hey, this is your basic answer, and here's a sleep round. However you want to attack that, because like we've been talking about, there's so much talent here and so much star power. I feel like you can't really go wrong.
Yeah, it is. It's you have a lot of options. I would love to say like Hillary Knight, especially coming off the year that she had last year. She was healthy and it showed, and she was able to get so much stuff done. I guess the one thing that like kind of leaves the door open would be the Olympics, and
Yeah.
does that affect some of these players, and at what point does a Hillary Knight maybe have to start looking towards what's probably her last Olympics, maybe, right? Like that situation. I mean, she said as much that it is, but you can never trust athletes these days. They all want to play forever. But like, maybe at some point, maybe her attention shifts a little bit to the Olympics and kind of that setup, and fair, like totally fair. Um, but like maybe that leaves the door open for somebody else. I look at somebody like Alex Carpenter, who all along with this process, every time we've had her for media availability, it has always felt like the fact that she was left unprotected in the expansion draft really has stuck with her. And I think she's extremely motivated. I think if ever there was a time for Alex Carpenter to go in there and win MVP of the league and lead the league in scoring or something like that, it would be this year with that motivation. So I think Alex Carpenter might actually be my pick if I'm going with like a favorite. I think if I'm looking at a sleeper option, I think that's where you can start looking at like, look, if Julia Gosling's going to stay all year on the wing playing with both of them, I think it's possible that she's able to kind of show up and be the one. Also, somebody who I think is, looking to break out on that Canadian Olympic roster as well.
Mm.
So it
Mhm.
could very well be a season where you see a younger player like Julia Gosling come into her own, both on the international stage and here in Seattle, and really just kills it and cements herself as one of the top players in the world.
I do think that's something, and I'll answer the question too, which is not just pepper everything at you. Um, that's another part of the what will drive this team, right? Because there's talk about, hey, they'll need to get the chemistry together, which is, I'm not downplaying any of that. Get the chemistry together, get everybody to be cohesive, learn the systems. But yeah, I said this on uh an episode I did in the summer with Lydia Murray, who covers the fleet out in Boston. Hillary was not happy about being left unprotected. Alex Carpenter, you just talked about it with Carpy. You look at the veterans, I'm not sure they are thrilled about it. I'm sure they're embracing it. I'm sure we're way past them embracing it. Then you look, yeah, some of these players who haven't gotten the shine. You talk about Brooke Bryan a lot. she's won 2 Walter Cups. I'm sure she's fine. But Serdachny, I remember the first thing I was reading about her when she was signed is that this is a player that didn't get enough, shine or opportunity in Ottawa. What's she going to want to do? So I'm sure there's a lot of motivation for this team in addition to maybe buying into the sort of target on their back, right? Because um, shoot, when we had all of those availabilities the start of training camp, I know someone mentioned that as, hey, we're going to have a target on our back. There's
It
the
was
acknowledgement.
Serdachny.
The Wizard. Well, there you go. Because there's so much being made about the Vancouver rivalry, and maybe this is a controversial take. I don't believe in any of that until it happens organically. You know what I mean? Like with the Kraken, I don't buy anything about uh, Edmonton because you lose all the time. Vegas because you lose all the time. I think your rivals are teams like Colorado, who you played in a playoff. Like that's going to happen to me, right? But I get it. The geographical thing, like historically, Seattle and Portland, Seattle, Vancouver. I get it. I get it. But I really like Sir Dagny's answer to your point. Bring that up. Hey, teams are looking at Seattle. Teams are looking at Vancouver. So, that's a great point. To go back to the MVP thing, the more I think about it, the more, and you mentioned her, the more excited I am to watch Alex Carpenter rip everybody up. I mean, that top line, as I've said to you at the beginning of training camp, it is really fun to have a hockey team that has a certifiable top line, let alone top
Hmm.
six. Like, that's going to be really enjoyable to me. Um, she's an A. Her and Hillary obviously know each other really well. Saw them chatting pretty intensely before they got on the bus today. They're ready to go, man. Yeah. Before I throw it over to. Oh no, I'll add that. Before I go over to our segment with RJ, is there anything else that maybe I didn't talk about that you're ready to go for because what you want to bring up, because as I mentioned, by this time I'll have talked about all the news with the logo and everything, and I'll catch up from where we did our last episode together. It's just I don't know. I'm ready to go. As you mentioned, we've only got to wait a night. This should be exciting, and I think folks should be excited. It's not necessarily like you're going to have to deal with some of the crazy ticket prices the Kraken had at times. They're in the same buildings. I don't know. Is there anything torrent related that we haven't brought up that maybe you want to, mention before I send it over to our segment with RJ?
No, I mean, other than just, I'm super excited. I'm super pumped. I love the color, the slate green color. The jerseys look incredible in person. The merch options pretty good. Um, yeah, I'm super excited for everything. I think that, it's too early to have some of the conversations about like the longer term outlook of the team and the
Yeah.
roster and stuff like that. And you mentioned like Serdachny as a sleeper MVP. Like I think like next year is really her year because I
Mm,
think probably the idea is that, look, Serdachny goes from third line to second line this year, coming from Ottawa. She's going to really get some good opportunities here. But then if Alex Carpenter walks as a free agent after this year, 1C is going to be Serdachny, right? Like that is the player that this team is kind of committed to down the middle the most outside of drafting Jenna, right? So I think that that's something to watch, but I think it's maybe a longer term watch.
mm.
But it just feels weird to even begin talking about stuff like that when this season hasn't even actually started.
And who knows again how things look for the expansion draft? Like, who knows if
Yeah.
they go with the same sort of operating plan, for the draft and the exclusive signing window. It's kind of not only tough to look at it because you haven't even seen this team play a game, haven't because we couldn't watch the scrimmages.
Right.
Um, and with how this league is growing, there's no guarantee. Yeah, that's a fair point.
I was gonna
Uh,
say, what we're not gonna have the conversation of who should Megan Turner protect what with the three protection spots
right now,
available
no,
on the eve of the regular season starting. That's not the conversation.
that's
What
where
have I been doing here
that's
this whole time?
yeah, that's actually the only part of the episode I'm going to upload. I don't even want to look at that. Nope, because now my brain wants to try and do that brain exercise. Nope, that's not good for me. Okay. Yeah, we're
You
gonna
are
throw
you
it.
are technically our competitor after all, so I did have to throw a wrench in the works somehow.
Oh, competitor, whatever. It's been. I was gonna say before I throw it to us and RJ, it's been great having you on because, as you so healthily remind me, we hadn't done anything before the torrent existed. But no, it's been great. I mean, Dylan's been at all of these that I have, and it's been fun breaking this sort of things down. Even looking at them what they're doing on the power play. It's hearing it all broken down. It's fun, and this team could be fun and good, not just
Yes.
fun.
No,
But
it's been awesome being able to hang out with you at these and again, it's been a different enough atmosphere from all the Kraken stuff that it
mm,
feels genuinely different. This team, just the way everything happens around them is just different and lighter, a little bit more fun. They still obviously mean business and they're
yeah,
putting in the work and all of that for sure. But I think the difference in just the players' like willingness to do media, the willingness to show personality, compared to NHL players and all of that, like it has really made everything a lot more enjoyable. And then certainly being able to spend as much time with you as we've had this last couple of weeks has been awesome. And I certainly hope that you'll have me back on to talk about the torrent and we'll be able to talk about all the great things that they're going to be doing here pretty shortly.
hey, when we're doing the Walter Cup parade celebration episode, we'll look back at this. No,
Yeah.
it's great. And I'm sure, I won't beat you to death. I can only pay your appearance fee so much. Um, you know, but no, it'll be great. You know, I'm happy to be around. I think the big thing that I'll end it with before I throw it to our lovely friend RJ and us. Um, minutes chili cookouts, man. Is I think it's important to cover this team, and not that like I had doubts, but that's the whole part of why I started even when I had this old logo here, was covering these women's teams. So it'll be great. It'll be great, and you've got folks that are dedicated to it. And I think that's great. So, I understand by theory we're competitors, but I'm happy to compete with someone who actually gives a shit about covering this team. So anyway, yeah, we've got our buddy RJ, also from Emerald City Hockey, if you're unaware. Um, Dylan, one of the hosts with Dylan on the Downpour, Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Torrent podcast. So you'll get that right about. This is how I guess we're going to bring RJ into the fold for this episode. Um, my good buddy RJ, who, as Dylan complained to me, I only bring along to talk about the Kraken, and it's just him and I to talk about the Kraken, no one else. Um, Dylan, Lord knows Dylan loves talking bad about me. Anyway, no, it's exciting. You guys obviously have the downpour. Was, talking to both you guys about that's really exciting. I know just recorded that. Um, but no, RJ wanted to bring you in here, talk about some of the, bigger overlying things with this torrent team. Uh, we can go to Dylan too. I know we've got the time for it, but since you are the current new addition by the time this part of the episode's coming out, we'll go to you. What sticks out to you as the keys to success for this team? Obviously, there's a lot of expectation with this expansion team and with how the draft and the exclusive signing window went. I know fans around the league are thrilled about how that happened. But obviously, you can put a team together with all the talent in the world, but if they don't gel, they don't come together, don't play the game right, it doesn't matter, right? Um, what sticks out to you as some keys to success for this team in year one? And Dylan, I can have you pick up after our good buddy RJ here in his lovely blue shirt.
Well, thank you. I it's a nice shirt. Now I think for the torrent in year one, a lot of it's going to be early on, just trying to figure out the chemistry, getting everyone playing together and on the same page. Dylan and I did a good breakdown of the position groups and just how strong the blue line is. That really stands out to me. I want to give Dylan a chance to talk about it too, because that's really the biggest area of strength for this team. But you will not find another blue line that looks like this in the entire league, and nothing that's even really close. I mean, the Torrent second pair could easily be a first pair on any other team of Wilgren and Barnes. That should be a first D pair. And
It
so I
was the
think
first D pair.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they basically just took it from Montreal. Exactly. And so, and that should have the chemistry ready to go on that D pair. And I think that's where they're going to be the best from the very start. Combine that with a really solid goalie in Corinne Schroeder, probably playing most of the games. And you're going to have a really strong defensive foundation for this team, where even if it takes the offense a while to click, to gain that chemistry, to be able to score, especially on the power play, which that just takes time of knowing where everyone's going to be. But in the meantime, I think your blue line is strong enough that if you play conservatively enough, don't make any huge mistakes, you should be in every game from the very start. And then if the forward group starts to click and starts to gel, look out.
Okay? I'll go.
I,
No, I mean, look, I agree with everything RJ said. I mean, this is a team that is so talented, where they're really only rivaled by Vancouver as far as talent on roster and what they're going to be able to do. Just going out there and playing, look, you can afford to kind of for everything to start coming together. And that's something that I had asked head coach Steve O'Rourke yesterday when we had the media availability with him, was just kind of how long he thinks it's going to bleed into the regular season, them setting in and installing their systems. And he basically said, look, we have, checkpoints kind of to reach by certain times of the year, the Olympic break, the takeover tour time. But really, he's hoping that it all comes together and they're able to make a huge push in the last month of the season. And then if playoffs are in the cards for them, into the postseason. And I think that that's kind of what the realistic expectation should be for this team coming in, is that they are incredibly talented. From day one, they're going to be able to be in games, they're going to be competitive. But I think we're going to see a varying, not effort from like an effort standpoint, but varying, results as far as how the team looks out there. There's going to be games where the special teams play is going to be sloppy because they just don't have the chemistry with each other yet, and they're still figuring that out. And they're still figuring out the personnel probably that they want to have on the different units there. And there's going to be games where at 5-on-5, the same thing is going to happen. You're going to have that incredible blue line. You're going to have an incredible top six. I mean, with the forward groups, but you don't have anybody who played with each other last year. Like you've already, based on the lines that we've seen these last 2 days, you've broken up the few pairings that you already had. You broke up Hillary Knight and Hannah Bilka. You broke up Eldridge and Carpenter. Anybody who had the opportunity to play with each other last year, they're not playing with each other right now. So you are really starting from scratch when it comes to that chemistry, but you're still talking about names like Knight, Bilka, Carpenter, Eldridge. They're going to score, they're going to show up for you. And so I think that's just the big thing, is that this is a team that knows they're going to, for them anyway, start slow, but that slow start should still have them as, I mean, realistically, an above 500 team, but at the very least, a 500 team.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. That was what I was gonna, you talk about that top six, and I feel like there are two players on this top six that this could apply to. I was gonna talk about potential breakout, and I know Dylan and I have talked about this. When we've been at these practices, Daniel Serdachny certainly feels like someone that is there. But I mean, Julia Gosling playing on a line with Alex Carpenter and Hillary Knight, it's hard to feel like this is a perfect opportunity to kind of take advantage of that. Um, I guess, I know you, if I got this correct, you guys did kind of a whole breakdown on this roster, right? So I'm gonna, I'll do it when it's just Dylan and I talking, RJ, but I will obviously push people to go and check that out. But yeah, I mean, I've already listed them as I guess I'll go to Dylan first because I don't want to keep going straight to RJ. But for breakout, I mean, is it as easy as just a Serdachny, a Gosling, or is there someone maybe that you're looking at otherwise for a breakout here? Because there's just so much talent. It feels like you can't really go wrong picking out a breakout here on this Seattle roster in year one.
Yeah, I mean that's so much of this, and it's one of those, like, they can't, almost, you don't have a lot of breakout candidates because they're all already stars. They're all already like
Yeah.
legitimate talents who have played in this league, produced in this league. There's just not a lot of people on this group that actually have the ability to break out. But you look at like Serdachny, She has the opportunity to break out. Limited minutes last year in Ottawa. Second overall pick, though. She has the ability to break out now that she's going to be in a true top six role. She's already like the fastest player out there. Getting somebody who can kind of go with her and play with speed and Hannah Bilka, they should be a great pair together. Julia Gosling, I think, has arguably the best shot on the team. Somebody who definitely could break out in the sense of look, you look at like last year's results and stuff around the league and who's on this Torrent roster, and you're going to look at Hillary Knight, Alex Carpenter, you're going to look at Eldridge, you're going to look at Bilka. They are like the top four. Julia Gosling has the skill to be there with them, just wasn't really given the opportunity to do so last year. Absolutely has that opportunity now, especially if this line is going to be around for a little bit, playing with Carpenter and Hillary Knight. I mean, you could stick just about anybody there and they're going to produce, but then you put somebody with the skill set that Julia Gosling has, she's absolutely going to produce. So it's one of those where I think they're the two like big breakout candidates because really they're the two joining this top six that's already littered with top 15 players from the league last year when you look at game score per 60. Like why wouldn't they be the breakout performers? They're good in their own right, but now they're getting to play with legit superstar talent.
Yeah, I mean, as far as breakout performers, for me, I mean, Dylan, you hit the nail on the head. Those are the two obvious players. And you're right. It's hard to look at anybody else because there's so many existing stars on this team. I guess if I had to look somewhere else for a breakout candidate, it might be a net. I mean, Corinne Schroeder is going to be the starter. She's going to do what she does. But I'm looking at Carly Jackson and to a lesser extent, Hannah Murphy. Of course, Murphy younger there. And Carly Jackson, the oldest of the goalie trio. But you look and Jackson's only able to play one game last season, right? But it was a fantastic game. I think they had a 960 something save percentage in that one game. Fantastic effort. You got to figure they're going to get more games than that this season, behind Corinne Schroeder and between Jackson and Murphy. This defense, this blue line, this team is going to make any goalie look pretty good. And so Schroeder's going to do her thing. She's going to be the starter, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some pretty good looking backup goalie numbers.